Good evening, welcome to my channel. I'm back with another story. I believe this is number 94 in the sequence, and just to remind you, there's a competition where you can help provide me with the words for a future story and win a signed copy of my forthcoming book, Running Coyote and Fallen Star. The instructions are here. Okay, so this story is a little bit longer than usual, but not too long. It's based on 5 random words, and as usual, I shall show you the 5 random words. And as I said, it's number 94, and it's called Agata's Forest. We are fighting when we enter the solicitor's office and stunned into silence as we leave. If you ask me tomorrow what the fight is about, I'll probably have forgotten. I think it started when Sue reminded me that I hadn't yet cleared out the attic, as I'd promised to 6 months ago. This led into a long diatribe about how I make thousands of promises I have no intention of keeping. I tell her this is ridiculous, it wasn't thousands, and in any case, I always mean what I say. She asks why I don't do what I say I will do, and I reply that I tend to overpromise. She laughs bitterly and things escalate as we walk from the tube station to the Holborn offices of Naipaul, Bansal and O'Brien. By the time we get there, Sue is doing that irritating thing of walking just a couple of paces ahead of me. "I just don't want to look at you right now," she says. So why does that mean I have to look at you, I think. 25 minutes later, our mutual animosity is entirely forgotten, replaced by bewildered surprise. "She's giving us what?" I say, disbelieving. "Miss Agata Szymanski has awarded you the entire contents of her home," explains Mr. Bansal, wearing his best poker face. I'll bet this is his favourite part of the job, I can't help but think. That our neighbour, the elderly paraplegic artist Agata, has written us into her will isn't entirely surprising. After all, I've driven her to the seaside umpteen times, and Sue has prepared her meals when she's poorly and helped maintain her garden, as have I, although relegated to nothing more demanding than grass cutting. But Agata has apparently given us the entire contents of her home. Admittedly, this might prove something of a poisoned chalice, since every time Agata, who could be exceedingly grumpy, has deigned to let us inside, we'd made it no further than her front room, her entertaining room, and the kitchen. We'd even had to use our own bathroom, since Agata claimed to be too embarrassed to let her see hers. We'd put it down to Polish eccentricity rather than outright rudeness, and did not press the point. "Here are the keys she left you," said Bansal, taking a fob containing 7 or 8 keys from a manila envelope. "You're free to dispose of anything as you see fit." "We're not going to just throw everything away," says Sue irritably. Sometimes I suspect she deliberately misunderstands things. "It doesn't mean dispose as in throw away, Susie." I use her preferred abbreviation to annoy her. She ignores me, grabs the keys, and we leave in silence. We don't investigate Agata's place until the following Saturday, since we both had demanding weeks. Sue is chief executive officer of a small charity, and I'm an industrial designer. And we suspect it's going to be a chore. We've seen precious little of Agata's home, and less of her paintings, but there's bound to be a lot of junk and a kingdom of dust and spiders in there. Saturday morning, 8:30 a.m. Sue and I are on something of an even keel. There have been no fights in the 3 days since the meeting with the solicitor. Agata's funeral is tomorrow, and we want to find out what's in her forbidden fortress of solitude before we have to meet whatever relatives show up. We're sure some of them must be furious that 2 strangers are mentioned in her will, regardless of whatever crap we're inheriting. We'll make lists of things to let them have. Most of it, probably. There are a couple of landscape paintings of Agata's on display in the front room, immense tangled blue and green forests, which I know Sue wants. I find them a little creepy, to be honest, although they're skillfully done. Every room in Agata's bungalow has its own key. She was always obsessed with security. The building seems to have been built with an American ranch layout and is L-shaped with low eaves and even a small porch. Agata said it reminded her a little of the shacks from her childhood on the Polish-Belarusian border. A long ramp leads from the front gate to the level of her hallway. We walk up it in silence, and, surprisingly, Sue grips my hand tightly. I guess it is a strange feeling entering a neighbour's house after their passing. A stroke evidently carried Agata off in her sleep, a death I'd cherish too. The hall and front room are surprisingly clean and dust-free. Agata did have good sturdy arms and would wheel herself around quite ably most of the time, even into her early 80s. "I lose my arms, I cannot paint or carve, I might as well die," she'd once told me. I wondered about the word carve, since I'd only ever seen her paint, often in her back garden with an easel I'd sawn through the legs of to lower it. "We might as well start here and work back," Sue says, clipboard and pen in hand. Being very much the A-type personality in our marriage, her notion is to itemise everything and then decide what, if anything, we want to keep. The remainder of the list can be handed to the relatives, and then they can argue about who gets what. It seems eminently sensible, and when I realise that Sue is making good progress with the front rooms, I suggest that I start on Agata's inner sanctum. I have my own clipboard, and I'm competitive by nature. I leave the kitchen to Sue and check out the bathroom, which it transpires is a perfectly ordinary, albeit wheelchair-adapted room. The wallpaper is a lively Rousseau-esque depiction of a jungle full of parrots, but otherwise it's well worth skipping. To the immediate left and opposite the kitchen is the first locked door. I fish out the keys and the lock turns with the third of them. I open the door, flick a light switch and freeze, entirely unprepared for what greets me. The walls are entirely black, painted with a tone so dense it seems to absorb most of the light. What little illumination remains is provided by an overhead bulb swathed in a ripped wasp's nest spiral of paper and steel. Before me lies a veritable forest of reclaimed driftwood trees. At least 30 elaborately carved and patterned fake tree trunks extend from the floor to the ceiling, some of them even nailed together to sprawl across the roof. They're so densely packed in, I have to squeeze between many of them to move around in the space. The trunks are all varnished, as if to confuse the distinction between natural wood and furniture. In fact, there actually is furniture here, a dresser, a small wooden table and 2 chairs, but they too have been carved and whittled, decorated with leaf and root patterns, then integrated into the surreal forest. Each leaf shape is distinct and perfectly detailed. Each groove in the bark is pristine and immaculate. And yet the whole thing lacks something. Greenery. This is a winter forest with the oriental shade as the moon. This is a forest of memory, of childhood dreams, or nightmares, a remembered, reconstructed landscape. So many things fall into place and make sense now. The mysterious deliveries of huge packages swathed in bubble wrap, the workmen coming and going, the banging and dragging sounds we'd sometimes catch when we walked past her garden, the many small nicks and cuts on Agata's hands we assumed were due to her accident-prone perambulations. The fact that she would let no one back here. Every inch of the secret forest bears the signature of Agata's strong, nimble and determined presence. A thought enters my mind, a meaningless question that only a designer, a functional creative, could ask. What is it for? I explore further, discovering little details. A family of birds in a carved hollow halfway up one thick bowl, a morsel of ancient food that might once have been bread, forgotten in the crease between branches. And then at the back of the room, another shock, a wheelchair-sized hole in the plasterboard, leading through to the next room. This room is painted a deeply ruddy red and similarly filled with trees, but these trees are dressed in curled, partly burned leaves torn from old books. Books in many languages, evidently bought in bulk. A couple of half-full cardboard boxes sit in the corner, containing piles of English hymn books, volumes of Polish poems, and Arabic somethings or other. In this room too are the carved remains of furniture, a 4-poster bed, a wardrobe, a small desk and a chair. The bed's woolen coverlet is crimson and thrown back as if Agata has just vacated it. She chose to sleep in the autumnal room, not knowing she was in the winter of her life. 2 furry brown plaid slippers stand side by side under the bed as if awaiting her return. I already know what I'll find through the plasterboard portal in this room's side door. Agata ripped out the whole door and much of its surround to grant egress into the summer woodland, once a study, if the roll-top desk sprouting ivy is anything to go by. The only room with a window that isn't shuttered, this room glows with morning sunlight and is a livid yellow-green, with flowers and bees painted on every available surface, and green swathes of crepe paper leaves. not fresh paperbacks, creating a rustling canopy overhead. Then one more portal, extending deep into the L at the rear of the house. In this long, narrow space hides a pale blue springtime. In this final room, which contains no furniture at all, the thin black and white painted birches wear green buds. On closer inspection, these are the barbs of several thousand sets of green flighted darts. A dartboard has been repurposed as a rising sun on one wall, a humorous touch that makes me laugh aloud. Underfoot there's a dusty shag pile carpet woven together from thousands of colourful rags. A trio of stuffed toy bunnies emerges from a burrow in one trunk, completing the naive but endearing scene. What? Just what? I turn to see Sue standing in the ripped open doorway behind me, her eyes brimming with tears that she will later tell me came from nowhere. I laugh in an oddly hollow and unconvincing manner and walk over to embrace my confused wife and fellow explorer of Agata's inner world. I squeeze her tightly against me, rigid with old regret. Her voice muffled against my shoulder is indistinct, hard to make out. I think she says, "We're not going to give this to the relatives." I sigh, knowing there will be a strange but important battle ahead. A struggle for the true meaning and ownership of Agata's secret forest. An important struggle because this cannot be simply tossed in a skip. To gut the space and release the value of a piece of property, that would be an appallingly callous act of sabotage. Agata's art externalizes the world we all carry within ourselves, the unreclaimable, bittersweet kingdom of youth. Here at last, for however many hours she devoted to it, Agata could re-enter that kingdom and be young and free once more. We can't take that from her, even now. So, the idea from that story is deeply entrenched in an idea I had for a novel many, many moons ago called Shy, which maybe one day will get written, about an incredibly shy guy who turns his whole house into this weird living artwork. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that, and remember to enter the competition. I might put the instructions up at the end of this video one more time, and I will see you again for story 95, Edging Closer, very soon. Bye.